The acrid stench of smoke and death hung heavy in the air, a suffocating blanket that seemed to press down on Dion Blunt from all sides. He stood amid the ruins of what had once been a thriving city, now reduced to little more than a shattered husk by the relentless onslaught of the Gargans. All around him, the corpses of the fallen lay strewn across the rubble-strewn landscape. Humans and aliens alike, their bodies twisted and broken, their eyes staring sightlessly up at the ash-choked sky. Dion had seen more than his fair share of death in the 9 years since the Gargans had first arrived on Gonzalo, but the sheer scale of the devastation still took his breath away. He tightened his grip on his pulse rifle, the weapon feeling like an extension of his own body after so many years of constant warfare. At 24, Dion had been fighting for nearly half his life, ever since the day the Gargans had descended from the sky in their sleek, silver ships and begun their relentless march across the surface of Gonzalo. They were small, the Gargans, standing no more than a foot tall. But what they lacked in size, they more than made up for in technological prowess. Their weapons were like nothing Dion had ever seen before, sleek and deadly, capable of cutting through even the toughest armor like a hot knife through butter. And their tactics were ruthless, a coldly efficient mix of overwhelming force and calculated cruelty. They targeted civilians and soldiers alike, wiping out entire cities and leaving nothing but scorched earth and shattered bones in their wake. Dion had lost count of the number of friends and comrades he had seen fall to the Gargans' advanced weaponry. Each death was like a fresh wound, a searing pain that never seemed to fully heal. But he had learned to push through the grief, to focus on the mission at hand and the slim hope of someday driving the invaders back from Gonzalo's shores. Now, though, as he stood amid the ruins of yet another destroyed city, that hope seemed more distant than ever. His squad had been tasked with holding the line against a massive Gargan offensive, a last-ditch effort to buy time for the civilian population to evacuate. But the Gargans had been too many, their weapons too powerful. One by one, Dion had watched as his squad mates fell, their bodies shredded by the relentless hail of plasma fire. And now, he was the last one left, a lone soldier standing against the might of an entire alien army. Dion knew that he was fighting a losing battle. The Gargans were closing in from all sides, their chittering voices and clanking machinery echoing through the ruined streets. He had limited ammunition and no backup, no hope of rescue or reinforcement. But he was a soldier of Gonzalo, a defender of his people, and he would fight to his last breath, would make the Gargans pay for every inch of ground they took. As he checked his weapon and surveyed the shattered landscape around him, Dion's mind drifted back to his childhood, to the days before the war had consumed every waking moment. He remembered playing in the streets with his friends, chasing each other through the winding alleys and crowded marketplaces. He remembered the day the Gargans had first arrived, the sky darkening with the shadow of their ships. The adults had tried to hide their fear, had told the children that everything would be all right. But Dion had seen the truth in their eyes, had known that their world would never be the same. In the years that followed, he had watched as his home was transformed into a war zone, as the once vibrant cities of Gonzalo crumbled to dust beneath the Gargans' relentless assault. He had seen friends and family members fall, had held their hands as they breathed their last. And through it all, he had clung to the hope that someday, somehow, they would find a way to turn the tide, that the sacrifices of the fallen would not be in vain, that Gonzalo would once again know peace. Now, though, as he stood alone amid the ruins of a shattered world, that hope seemed like little more than a distant dream. The Gargans were too strong, their technology too advanced, and Dion was just one man, a single soldier standing against the crushing weight of an alien juggernaut. But he would not falter, would not give in to despair. He was a warrior of Gonzalo, a protector of his people, and he would fight to the bitter end, would make the Gargans pay for every life they had taken, every dream they had shattered. With a final check of his weapon, Dion turned to face the approaching horde, his eyes hard with determination. The Gargans were closing in, their weapons glinting in the harsh light of Gonzalo's twin suns. But Dion was ready, his finger poised on the trigger of his pulse rifle. He would give them hell, would make them remember the name of Dion Blunt. For Gonzalo, for the fallen. He would fight, and he would die, but he would not go quietly into the night. The Gargons swarmed over the rubble, their tiny forms scuttling like insects amid the shattered remnants of the city. Dion opened fire, his pulse rifle spitting out a steady stream of searing energy bolts. The air crackled with the stench of ozone and burning flesh as the bolts found their marks, sending Gargon soldiers tumbling to the ground in smoldering heaps. But for every alien he felled, two more seemed to take its place, their advanced armor absorbing the brunt of the rifle's fire. They returned fire with their own weapons, sleek, silver rifles that pulsed with an eerie blue light. The air around Dion sizzled with the heat of their passing, the ground at his feet erupting in showers of molten rock and metal. He dove for cover behind a shattered wall, his heart pounding in his chest. The Gargons were closing in, their chittering voices growing louder with each passing moment. Dion knew that he couldn't hold out much longer, that his ammunition was running low and his body was beginning to feel the toll of the relentless battle. But he pushed himself back to his feet, gritting his teeth against the pain that lanced through his battered body. He had made a promise, to himself and to the people of Gonzalo. He would fight to his last breath, would make the Gargons pay for every inch of ground they took. He leapt from behind the wall, his rifle blazing as he charged into the midst of the Gargon horde. The aliens scattered before him, their tiny bodies no match for the sheer ferocity of his assault. Dion felt a savage joy rise up within him as he cut through their ranks, his rifle growing hot in his hands as he poured shot after shot into their midst. But then, a searing pain exploded in his side, and he stumbled, his vision going gray at the edges. He looked down to see a smoking hole in his armor, the edges of the wound charred and blackened. A Gargon had gotten in a lucky shot, the alien's advanced weaponry punching through his defenses like they were nothing. Dion fell to one knee, his rifle slipping from his grasp. The Gargons surged forward, their weapons leveled at his head. But even as they closed in, Dion's eyes fell upon a battered tank lying on its side nearby, its armor scorched and pitted by the fierce battle that had raged around it. A desperate plan formed in his mind, a final suicidal gambit. He lunged for the tank, ignoring the searing pain that tore through his body with every movement. The Gargons opened fire, their bolts sizzling past his head and scorching the ground at his feet. But Dion was faster, his adrenaline-fueled body propelling him forward with a speed born of desperation. He reached the tank and hauled himself up onto its side, his fingers scrabbling for purchase on the scorched metal. The Gargons were right behind him, their weapons pulsing with deadly energy. But Dion paid them no heed, his attention focused solely on the tank's ammunition store. He tore open the hatch and began pulling out the shells, his hands shaking with the effort. He could feel his life slipping away, the wound in his side pulsing with each ragged breath. But he pushed on, stacking the shells in a precarious pile atop the tank. The Gargons were closing in, their weapons leveled at his head. With a final, desperate effort, Dion ignited the tank's fuel line, the flames licking hungrily at the pile of shells. He could feel the heat searing his skin, could hear the Gargons' chittering voices rising in a chorus of fear and confusion. But he paid them no heed, his eyes fixed on the sky above. He thought of his fallen comrades, of the countless lives that had been lost in the long, bloody war against the Gargons. He thought of the people of Gonzalo, the ones he had sworn to protect with his life. And he smiled, a fierce, defiant grin that split his face from ear to ear. He had done his duty, had held the line against the alien invaders for as long as he could. And now he would give them a taste of their own medicine, would show them the true meaning of sacrifice. The shells exploded with a deafening roar, the force of the blast throwing Dion backwards like a rag doll. He felt a searing heat envelop him, felt the shards of metal and rock tearing through his flesh. But he felt no pain, no fear. Only a sense of peace, a deep, abiding calm that seemed to fill his entire being. He had made his stand, had given his life for the people of Gonzalo. And as the darkness closed in around him, as the last breath left his body, Dion knew that he had made a difference. That his sacrifice would be remembered, that the Gargons would pay for every life they had taken. For Gonzalo, for the fallen. He had fought, and he had died, but he had not gone quietly into the night. And in that final, fleeting moment, as the light faded from his eyes and the world grew still around him, Dion knew that he had found his peace. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to leave us a like and subscribe too. We'll see you in the next video.